Next come the Egyptians from about 3000 BC to about 300 BC. The Egyptians also had a society and a culture of their own, and they had their own mannerisms of making sure that their young people got an education. So let's look at the six elements under the Egyptians. What were the educational goals? Why did the Egyptians want to have the young people educated? What was the purpose? Their purpose was to prepare priests according to scribe for the empire. Now, the Egyptians also were a monarchy. There was an empire. They had kings, and they also had a strong belief in their own religious beliefs of the time. And so, their purpose of education was to create priests who could keep their gods happy so that the gods would keep them happy. So, the purpose is clear. Again, very religious, just like the ancient Indians. Who were the students again? They were again males of the upper class. Egyptian society also was divided into classes. If you happened to be a male of the upper class, you were lucky, you received an education, and you could become a priest. If you were a lower class individual or a female member of the society, you were not afforded any sort of education. Instructional methods here was memorization and copying texts. Now we see a difference. The ancient Chinese had memorization, the ancient Indians had memorization, the Egyptians also had memorization. But we see a difference in all three. The Chinese, with memorization, had recitation. You just had to recite without error. The Indians had recitation, but you had a chance of providing your own understanding or your own meaning to the text. What the Egyptians did was they made you write. So you had to learn the text and then write them. And that is copying text, word for word. If you had learned well, you really could just copy the text out without ever looking at the original copy of the text. And that's how the ancient Egyptians were able to educate their young people. You just had to write and write and write and just keep doing that. Text after text, same text after same text, depending on how many errors you made or did not make. The curriculum was religious or technical texts. Now, with the Egyptians, what we see was there is a focus on religion, but there is also focus on the technical needs of the time. Whatever those technical needs were, people expected that you would know your religion and you would also know the technical abilities and capabilities of the time. You had to, because you were being educated to become a priest in the temple, you were to make sure that the gods were happy so that the pharaohs and the people could be happy too. So the agents or the teachers were really the priests and the scribes. The priests were individuals who actually conducted the ceremonies in the temple. The scribes were the ones who simply wrote down the spiritual text. So that's the difference. So if you had to learn both, if you were good, you became a priest, you learned the rituals and mannerisms of doing the religious activities and conducting the religious details of the time. If you were not that good, you only ended up being a scribe. You were only expected to write and copy text because the purpose was people needed to have texts in order to learn them. And as population expanded, more texts were needed. So what better way to produce texts than to have young people copy them and reproduce them for you? Influence on education, restriction on educational controls to the priest elites. So if the priest elite thought something needed to be changed or something needed to be modified, or just someday came and said that he had this message from the gods that this needed to be done, then that changed. So the influence was completely in the hands of the priest elites. Not just every priest. The priest elites were the teacher priests, the priests who could teach the other young people in the conditions, mannerisms, rituals of doing things in the temple. So, a very limited influence, but yet it was a rather large influence because only a few people controlled what most of the other people, the young men particularly, had to undergo in order to someday replace them.